Hello friends, welcome back to the channel, or if you are new here, welcome. Today I'm sharing with you the meals that I have made for my family of 6 this past week, and we are starting off today's video with chicken and Caesar smash tacos. I think these were a huge thing on the internet like a year ago. I remember seeing them all over my feed, but I never really tried making them. So today this is going to be the first time that I'm trying these, and a little bit of a spoiler alert, but they were a huge hit. I'm starting off by mixing together some seasonings with some ground chicken in this bowl. You can use other things. I'm pretty sure I've seen people use ground chicken, ground turkey, ground beef. You can use whatever you're wanting. I have a lot of ground chicken on hand, so that is what I'm using. The seasonings that I used for this were just some salt, pepper, and garlic. I didn't go crazy with them because I'm going to be adding a Caesar salad on top, and the Caesar salad dressing that I make, it has a lot of flavor, so I'm wanting that to kind of be the star and not be overpowered by the flavor of the meat. So I kept the meat very simple. I added in an egg, and then I'm going to add in some panko breadcrumbs. You can add in whatever kind of breadcrumbs you want. You can make the breadcrumbs yourself if you would like. This is what I had on hand, so that is what I used. I'm going to get that all mixed up, and then I'm going to set it aside and start on the dressing. I found this Caesar dressing quite a bit ago. I want to say it was probably close to like 10 years ago when I was testing out different recipes, and I didn't have all the ingredients, and I was a little nervous about using like egg and stuff like that that's traditionally in a Caesar salad dressing. So I found this recipe years and years and years ago, and I've kind of just adapted it to my own liking, and this is something that has stuck. My daughter, for her entire life, she's never really liked dressings. However, she always likes the homemade ones that I make, and this is one of her favorites. I usually will just do mayo, olive oil, some Dijon mustard, lemon juice, garlic, salt, pepper, Parmesan cheese, and then I also do like to add in capers because I think usually anchovies are used, and when I was back in the day looking up this recipe, they said that capers was a good substitution for that. I think because it has that like saltiness of the fish. So anyway, that's what I use for my Caesar dressing. It is obviously not traditionally made that way, but it is a really great alternative for our house. I'm mincing up the capers, and then I'll add that to the jar and give it a really good shake. Now, I don't really have exact ingredients from this. Like I said, I've been making this for quite a while, and I usually just kind of guess. So that is about how I do it, but it's always usually the same ingredients unless I'm missing something, but it always turns out really good. Now that I have the dressing all made, I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to finish up the tacos. So I have these tortillas. I got the smaller ones because I didn't want them to be too big, but I didn't get like the street taco size. I know that I've seen people using the street tacos. So these are just small flour tortillas. I'm sure you can switch that up however you're wanting. And I'm just spreading the chicken mixture onto these pretty thin, because if you do it too thick, you'll have trouble cooking it all the way through. So I made sure I got it really thin. I'm going to coat all of these, and then we're going to put it on the griddle. If you have a flat top grill, you could totally use that. I do not. We have basically every other kind of grill but that. So I'm going to just cook these on the griddle, and you will cook them meat side down, and it will cook a couple minutes. You want to just kind of check to make sure that it's cooked through, and then you'll flip it, and it only really takes a couple seconds. Once it's on the tortilla side, you'll just kind of brown it, and then it is done. As I was cooking these, I had basically everybody in the kitchen sitting there talking with me. And when my daughter came over, she didn't realize, but she unplugged the griddle. And I didn't realize either. And so part of these I was cooking and they just like weren't getting done. And I'm like, what is going on? And she's even like messing with the dial. We're trying to figure it out. And it took us probably 5 minutes to figure out that we ended up unplugging it and it wasn't even on. So that's why it ended up taking so long. But these cook very quickly, especially once you get it started and you don't unplug it. So I got these all cooked up, and then I topped them with the salad. And because I had the salad on top, I didn't want to like serve it with a salad, so I just served it with a side of chips. And here is how dinner turned out this evening. These were such a hit. Really, really love how simple these were. Very minimal ingredients, and they came together very quickly. So they are great for those really busy evenings. And like I said, every single person was really excited about these. For the next meal that I made, I'm kind of cracking up. So it's called stuffed shells soup. And this was not the first time I've made this, but it just kind of cracks me up every time I do make it. Because one, I cannot follow directions if my life depended on it. And if you are new here, that's pretty much the theme of my cooking. I follow recipes, but they are definitely just a guidance thing for me. So this is called stuffed shells soup, and the recipe that I originally followed, like the pictures and stuff, was definitely not soup. So I don't know why they're referring to it as soup, and mine was definitely a pasta, so I don't know. But then also I took it a step further, and when I went to go make this, I didn't even have any shells. So I'm sitting here editing it, and I'm just kind of laughing to myself how I'm calling it stuffed shells soup, because it is not soup and there are no shells in sight. So anyway, it tasted great. This is one of my go-to recipes as of right now. It is very simple to throw together. It's very versatile. So if you don't have an ingredient, you can easily swap it out. And my entire family really, really loves this. So this is something that I have been making pretty regularly. One swap that I keep making for this recipe is it originally calls for Italian sausage. However, I have not been able to find that for a couple weeks now in my store. So instead, I'm either using, I think usually I use ground beef. I've made this a couple times, but I think one time I did use ground chicken as well. Either way, I feel like it has enough seasonings and sauce and stuff that it really doesn't matter. I'm sure it would definitely be noticeable if you use the Italian sausage, but with ground chicken or beef, you don't really notice because there's all the seasonings and sauce and stuff. So anyway, just note that the recipe that I will have listed down below in the description box, it will say Italian sausage, but if you don't have that, feel free to use other things because I always do, and it always turns out great. So I'm started off with my ground beef in this pot, and I like to do a one pot thing, so I am just sauteing it all in this one pot. And then I'm adding in some onion. I added in like Italian seasoning, garlic, oregano. And then I added in about a quarter-ish cup of flour to thicken it up. So I added that into the meat and I got that nice and coated before I added in the chicken broth and like all the tomatoes. You'll do like tomato sauce. You can do tomato paste if you want. I'm also adding in, not this entire can because this was the only one I could find, this giant one, but I added in about 3/4 of that can of the diced tomatoes. And then once I have that all mixed together, I'm going to put in my pasta, and then I'll put the lid on it and I'll let the pasta cook all the way through. Then once the pasta is cooked all the way through is when I kind of like to throw in the spinach and the cream, stuff like that. So I'm going to let the pasta cook all the way through before I add in the other ingredients. I am never one to measure spinach. I don't know. My husband would be one to measure spinach, but it always cooks down so little. And so I always add a really huge amount of spinach, cook that down, and then I'm going to add in the cream. I'll stir that all together and then dinner is done. I didn't end up getting any shots of this plated. I'm not really sure what happened this evening, but I didn't get any shots. However, it is done at this point, and this is how it turned out. Like I said, I have made this meal quite a bit recently, and this is always a favorite of the week. Super simple. The ingredients are versatile. Use whatever you have on hand, and it's really delicious. Now, I have made pot roast a million times on my channel. That is something within like the last year that I've recently found out that I like. So I really have perfected the recipe. However, I have never made a cauliflower mash on my channel, which I feel like is such a great option when you're trying not to eat mashed potatoes or mac and cheese, anything like that. If you're trying to make better choices like I am to my diet, this was something that I was really excited to bring back and try, because it has been a while. I've made it several times over the years, but it has been probably a couple years since I've actually made it, and it just sounded really good. So that was something that I wanted to bring back, introduce it again to my kids, and be able to enjoy that with pot roast for dinner and not feel so guilty about it. So that is what I did. I'm just seasoning my pot roast. I never use this cowboy butter on the pot roast. This cowboy butter, I think it's Kinder's seasoning. I usually will just do salt and pepper, maybe some garlic sometimes, but this was a really nice addition, and I like this seasoning on pretty much everything. So I am getting it going in my Dutch oven. I have just a little bit of oil in the bottom. You can also use butter if you want, but I get it really hot and then I sear it on both sides. Once it's seared on both sides, I'll put beef broth in, just enough to almost cover it, and then I'll put it in the oven and let it cook low and slow for a couple of hours. It's been a couple of hours, so I'm going to go ahead and get started on this cauliflower. This is one head of cauliflower that I chopped up into smaller pieces. I didn't do super small because I plan on mashing them up, but I added in the rest of the beef broth that I had. I put that in, and then I'm going to fill the rest of the pot with water and put it on the stove to boil. As you can see, I'm also making potatoes because I wasn't quite sure if my kids would all enjoy it. So I wanted to kind of give the option of mashed potatoes as well, and I pretty much just made them very similar. I didn't add a bunch of the same stuff that I usually do to the potatoes. Like I probably added in more butter. I'll do more milk or cream. I usually will not add cheese to my potatoes, and the recipe that I was following for the cauliflower mash, it actually had cheese, and I'm like, well, that might actually help mask the flavor a little bit. So I added in some cheese into the cauliflower mash, but I feel like all in all, it's very similar to how you're making mashed potatoes usually. I'm going to add in some salt and pepper. I also like adding in garlic, and then instead of adding in sour cream like I usually do with the mashed potatoes, I'm going to be using just a little bit of Greek yogurt. Throughout the last month of my health journey, I have really made that swap anytime I can. Anytime I can get away with swapping out Greek yogurt and sour cream, that's usually what I would do. So like I said, I kept the mashed potatoes pretty much the same as normal. I went ahead and added the sour cream, but in these mashed cauliflower, I wanted to make that swap, make it a little bit more healthy, so I did the Greek yogurt. And here is how dinner turned out. So like I said, I served everyone with some mashed potatoes, and then I always use the juice from the pot roast as gravy. And then I served just a little bit of the cauliflower mash with some green onions, just so they can kind of try it and see if they liked it. And then I steamed some green beans. For our next meal, I made Swedish meatballs, mashed potatoes, and a cream gravy. I also did do a side of cucumber salad just to have a nice crunch on the side. I recently discussed in my grocery haul how I had trouble finding ground pork in my grocery store, so I found a mixture of ground pork and ground beef, and then I also used another pound of ground beef. So this is 2 pounds of meat. One of them is an entire pound of ground beef, and then the other one, like I said, is a mixture of ground beef and ground pork. It was the only thing I was able to find, and it did end up working out well. I think it would have turned out even better if it was the full pound of ground pork. So, you know, one of each, 1 beef and 1 pork. So, like I said, ultimately, it turned out really great. And it was a nice reminder of those days when we used to be able to go to IKEA regularly and have the Swedish meatballs and mashed potatoes. We always loved going there, but we don't even, the one that was closest to us was like 3 hours away, and I'm pretty sure they closed that one this past year. So I don't even know where one is anywhere near us. And so this is a really great alternative, and it's still very easy to put together. If you are used to making meatballs, really the ingredients are basically the same. They're just slightly different. So anyway, if you are interested in trying this recipe along with any of the other ones from today's video, you'll be able to find them down below in the description box. I have the meatball mixture all mixed together, so I'm using this like little cookie scoop and packing the meat mixture into it to form a really nice size meatball, and that way they're all pretty much the same size. I've got them going in just a small amount of grease on the stove, and then I'm going to just kind of cook them to sear on all sides. They won't be cooked all the way through, but I'll finish cooking them in the sauce. So while I am cooking these batches of meatballs, I thought I would share with you something that we started watching. So if you are new, we are not necessarily a TV family. We do not watch a bunch of TV. And so because of that, whenever we are around to watch TV or we want to watch TV, we don't really know what to watch. And we end up sometimes kind of watching some weird things. So a lot of times, like if I have a lot of laundry to do, I'll put on the TV and I'll really just kind of click through and see what I can find. I like watching YouTube. I feel like it's really motivating, and I will, usually watch that. However, as a family, we don't really have like shows that we watch. And one of the things that we found recently, on a whim basically, was Super Nanny. I don't know if that's even still on, but and I think the episodes that we were watching were like from the 90s or early 2000s. Let me know if you remember Super Nanny, because I was like telling my mom about it and she at first didn't know what I was talking about. And then I kind of explained it and she's like, oh my gosh, yeah. And I'm like, it's kind of like the whole wife swap. And it's so funny because my kids, especially my teens, they think it's hilarious. They absolutely love watching it. And so like almost every day for the last couple days, like right before dinner, we have this time period where none of us are on like any electronics or anything. And that goes for my teens. We have them put their phones away and we just spend good quality time while we're making dinner and all, the evening hours we do that. And So during that time, we have noticed that my older two, they will come down, and a lot of times they will put on Super Nanny, and then we end up watching that, off and on while we're making dinner or whatever we're doing that evening. And just to see how interested they are in it, it's just so funny. So I just thought I would share because I just thought that was so random and just, I don't know, interesting. We never know what to watch. And when we do, it's always something like that we end up turning on. Like I said, we also have watched, we haven't in a while, but one of the shows that we would watch would be Wife Swap, because those are always really interesting. I wish, maybe there is, I don't even know I think it's Lifetime that, would always do those shows. If they don't have anything, I wish that they would bring back more of that kind of stuff, because we always end up watching them. Now that I have all the batches of my meatballs done and put aside, I'm going to start on the cream sauce. And I'm going to use the same pan that I cooked the meatballs in, get all that nice flavor incorporated. I put a little bit of butter in the bottom of the pan, melted it down, and I'm combining it with flour to kind of really thicken up the mixture. Every time I go to make this, I always forget that it calls for Dijon, and that is something that you don't want to skip, because even though it seems a little weird, it really makes this cream sauce really delicious. That flavor and just a little bit of it really makes the sauce. And whenever I'm making a sauce or a gravy, I like to kind of slowly add in the broth or whatever liquid you're using, so I get the consistency that I'm looking for. So I like to just slowly add it in, and then once I get to the consistency, then I'll stop. But usually, you can always add it in, you just can't take it out. So I will slowly add in the liquid. I have a little bit of sour cream that I added in, that I'm going to get that all mixed together and incorporated. And then once this is all pulled together, I'm going to put the meatballs back in here. I'll put the lid on it, and then I'm going to slowly simmer it on a low until the meatballs cook all the way through. I always feel like this is a fun recipe to make, because it reminds me of our days when we were shopping around, and really just we would go to IKEA not really looking for anything, just if we had a free afternoon with nothing going on. We would go and just kind of walk around IKEA, and I think that was probably before we had Lincoln and Theo, because Theo, he was a COVID baby, so he didn't really get all those experiences, and then we moved shortly after. So we don't have one of those around. But anyway, it just always reminds me of those times, and it was nice, our little family just walking around IKEA. So anyway, this meal is always kind of nostalgic for me. The last meal I'm going to be making today is ribs with mac and cheese and a side salad. The mac and cheese also is the Goodles brand. I've recently been trying that out, and so we were having some of that for dinner tonight. I picked up this large pack of pork ribs because it was only $10.58, and I thought that was a pretty good deal for dinner. And that fed our whole family. I think we even had a little bit of leftovers. So I'm just going to season that up, and I really had nothing in mind here. I was just taking some seasonings out and seasoning it with whatever I wanted. I used to make pork ribs in the crock pot years ago, and I would use a lot of ginger and garlic. I wouldn't use dried ginger, like ginger powder, but I would use minced ginger, and it had such an amazing flavor. But I would use that and garlic and onions, and absolutely love that. So I was kind of incorporating that just a little here, and then as you can see, it kind of just all came out, and I was like, well, whoops, I hope they really like ginger because there was no going back from that. So I removed what I could and then spread it all around. Believe it or not, it actually was not overpowering of a ginger flavor. I was a little surprised. I think because it was the powder maybe, but I think if it was like minced ginger, it would have been like a lot. Anyway, so I got that all spread out, and I thought that this pineapple sriracha seasoning, I don't use this too often, but I thought maybe with the ginger and the garlic it would be a nice touch. So I'm seasoning it pretty heavily. I'm going to rub it in, and then I'm going to do the same seasonings on the back and get it wrapped up and in the oven to cook low and slow for the remainder of the day. This also did have a membrane on the back that I removed. I didn't want to show it on camera because I thought it was kind of gross. So I did that off camera, but just so you know, there is a membrane on the back and I did remove that. I feel like a lot of times when people are talking about ribs, they make it seem like they're really difficult, and they are really so simple. It's just like chicken legs. I feel like people will overcomplicate those too. And it is just a matter of getting some really great seasoning, or even like a great marinade is good too, but people are just overcomplicating them, I think, and they are so simple. So just taking a rack of ribs, you can do pork or beef. Like I said, I did pork, and just seasoning them with whatever you want, or if you prefer barbecue, that too, and cooking them low and slow. We had a project going on in the backyard during this, so it was the perfect meal that I didn't have to be in the kitchen for. Now, if you have been here for a little bit, you know that I am on a really strict diet, so I actually won't be eating a lot of the meals that are in today's video, but I like cooking large batches of chicken for myself, so I always just season them with the cowboy butter, throw those on the grill, and I usually will do all of it in one go and put those in the fridge for me to have throughout the week. So that's what I'm having for dinner. And then, like I said, I'm serving the Goodles noodles. This is something that we've only tried the original flavor of. I've heard that the other flavors aren't as good as the original flavor, but I feel like for what it is, having the protein and everything added into this pasta, and it being, I'm assuming, a little better than like Kraft and stuff, it's actually a really, really great alternative. In my opinion, I feel like it doesn't taste any different from Kraft. So again, if you're wanting to make those swaps, I feel like this is a really good one to swap out. But anyway, here is how dinner turned out. This was my chicken for the week, and then also my dinner, and then we had a salad with the ribs and some mac and cheese. It was a very simple and delicious dinner, and like I said, it was easy to pop it in the oven, forget about it, and move on with the projects that we were working on outside. But anyway, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope this video gave you a bunch of ideas of what you can do in your kitchen. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.